Start your show now. Press 1 to hear. Your show is scheduled to start in 20
What's up, everybody? What's up?
seconds.
We're getting ready to do this tonight. Let's go ahead and get some sharing going on. I want to welcome everybody to the Alchemy of Life show. Coach Renz. Tonight we're
Your
going to
show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Tonight we're going to be talking about. Tonight we're going to talk about the Gospel of Thomas. And let me move this out of the way for a second there, so we can get some sharing. You know how we do this. I will get a tripod for this iPad for next week's show, so it won't be in the way. But when you get on here, you know, say how you doing, hello, how you doing, share the video. I appreciate that, definitely. You know, the first few minutes we just do a lot of sharing. So, you know, get your water, get yourself ready. Get ready to set go, because this one there's a lot of information that I really wanted to cover, but we'd be here all night. It'd be like 4 hours or so if I covered everything about the Gospel of Thomas. So we're gonna cover we're gonna pick a subject matter, one of the main focal points of the Gospel of Thomas, and we're gonna focus there for the Gospel of Thomas. It's a very good book of wisdom. Hello from Cincinnati. On to sharing it on a couple of my other pages. And as soon as we get all these shares done, then we're gonna jump like right into it. From Cincinnati. How you doing, Tyrus? Everybody. We got both Facebook and YouTube going. Peace, God King. Peace to you too, my brother, my God King, as well. If you guys don't mind sharing this out, we want to get as many people, you know, connected as possible. And the way we're going to break this down, we're going to do a little bit of historical background on the Gospel of Thomas first, just so people have a frame of reference. And then we're going to focus on some of the key teachings based off of it. Because as you know, I look at every piece of wisdom from the Tao to the Buddhist texts, the Hindu texts, you know, those texts that they don't want you to know about. You know, we really should look at everything as just pieces of wisdom, things for us to learn from, grow from, develop into better human beings. Now, I'm going to give you guys a warning. I broke my glasses, my reading glasses. So when I get to the part where I gotta read some of these things, don't get mad at me, because I'll be messing that up real good. That part's gonna get messed up. All right, I think that's all the shares that I'm going to be able to do. So let me center you guys, my Facebook fam. Got to get you guys centered. Got my YouTube fam up here. We're on Blog Talk Radio for the Alchemy of Life. And I do want to, you know, self-promotion always. You know, if you want to support my channels, then of course you got my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Coach Renz, RENZ. There's also my store, UR Popcorn, Uncle Renz Popcorn, the letter U, the letter R, the word popcorn.com. If you want to buy some popcorn from me, I greatly appreciate that, and support of the channel as well as support of my business. I greatly appreciate the best popcorn you never had. If you haven't had it, if you have had it, then you know how great it is. Yeah, so, and then, you know, I do a lot of coaching programs as far as from your credit to relationships to personal development, business coaching, and you'll find all of that on CoachRenz.com. Now, moving ahead. Oh, I do want to say something. I want to get some comments on you guys' thought process. So, thank you for waiting. I appreciate that, Papa. It took me a little bit longer to get started. I put it on my Facebook page and Instagram that I was investigating the option of making a CBD popcorn. So in your comments, whether you're watching this now or later, I just want to hear what your thoughts on that. You know, if that's something you'd be interested in purchasing, CBD popcorn. I'm finding that it has great uses for people who deal with anxiety, depression, seizures, all those sorts of things. And to be able to make a good gourmet popcorn treat for people who are suffering through that, I thought would be a brilliant idea. So Tell me what you guys think, if that's something you'd be interested in. What's up, brother? Prisoner of the Highway. I like that name. So, we're going to discuss the Gospel of Thomas today. Gospel of Thomas. And I didn't plug my microphone into my phone, but it's all right. I think I talk loud enough anyway. We're going to discuss the Gospel of Thomas. THC, no, that's not legal in Georgia, and I'm in Georgia. So, but CBD, yes, that's legal in all 50 states. So, I want to hear your opinion on CBD. All right, when I open up in California, that'd be a different thing. DD Alchemy, how you doing, young lady? How are you doing? So, Gospel of Thomas. Right off the whip, I want to know, like, how many of you guys are familiar with the Gospel of Thomas? If you're familiar with it at all, just, if you're on Facebook, throw some hearts, some thumbs up, some whatever. I'm glad you're doing great. If you're, Papa got his book out right now, so Papa's going to be my challenge on the Gospel of Thomas. But if you've heard of it, let me know by some form or fashion if you've heard of the Gospel of Thomas, whether, through the little whatever comments or whatever. So if you've heard of it, that's great. For those who haven't heard of the Gospel of Thomas, what you have, most people know about the 12 disciples of Jesus according to the Bible and the New Testament, right? And one of those disciples, Thomas, right? You've heard of it, great. So Thomas is the one they call him Doubting Thomas. Like, after the resurrection, he's the one who didn't believe that was Jesus, so he wanted to touch it in his hand, show him the blood print. He needed proof, right? Now, that's an interesting point. We can stick on that point for a while right there, that here's a guy who had been walking around with Jesus, but he still needed proof that was Jesus in the flesh. So, but that's not what we're talking about, but that's the guy that they're talking about. That's the guy who this book has been attributed to. And the thing about Thomas, you have to understand his pathway. So after, as the history goes, the story goes, and as people proclaim, after the so-called resurrection of Jesus, you had the disciples dispersed. Now, they were given the commandment to go and preach to all of Jerusalem, right? You got your pen and paper, great. They were told to go teach to all of Jerusalem, then, preach to the Hebrews, then go preach to the Samaritans, and then all the surrounding areas, and all the nations. Well, if you read the book, you know that Peter and Paul got into arguments because Paul went straight to the Romans, and Peter was like, nah, bro, you ain't supposed to be telling them yet. You're supposed to hold that down and wait and just tell the Jewish people. So there was an argument. Now, Thomas, who had doubted, Thomas went to Syria. He went to teach there, according to it, and he followed, and according to the stories, he followed the Silk Road out to India and teaching all along out to India. Now, in Western India, you still have people. You find people who are Christian in Western India. Many of them will claim that they've been Christian for umpteen number generations because they are Thomasinian, meaning that they believe that the Apostle Thomas came out to Western India and taught about Jesus, right? So they have the Thomasinian teachings. Now, supposedly, there's another route on the way back from India. And that route on the way back takes you around the Arabian Peninsula, Yemen, Oman, and you come up into Egypt, okay? Now, and that's believable that a person could travel in that circle, because before this story, before the time frame of Jesus, before the time frame of all these other, the apostles, the Silk Road was already there. The trade route to India was already there. The Greeks had already went all the way out to India and conquered with the people in the Indus Valley. So it is very possible for somebody to go from the Mesopotamian area and follow that Silk Road all the way out to India. Now, it is also possible that they can come around the Arabian Peninsula and up into Egypt, because the story of Sheba coming up. Now, because Sheba had frankincense and myrrh and a whole bunch of it, it is grown in that Oman, Yemen area, so she could have come up through that way. And then you also saw that you had her coming up, and then you also had Alexander. When he left India, he came up through that route as well. So it is possible for someone to have traveled the Silk Road and then come by ship up into Egypt. And up in Egypt is where you get this Coptic Christians. And the Coptic Christian claimed that they had the teachings from Thomas, the Gospel of Thomas. Now they also had the Gospel of Thomas. They had the Infancy Gospel of Jesus by Thomas. They had a couple of the Acts of Thomas. And these are all part of the Coptic Christian teachings, also known as the Gnostics. That's a group of the Gnostics, right? So, they have these writings. So in these writings were taught through the 1st century, 2nd century, into the 3rd century, and to some degree all the way up to the 17th century. But what had happened was is that right around the 4th century, around the Council of Nicaea, their teachings had to go into hiding. They had to go into hiding because at the Council of Nicaea, what you had was Constantine had sided with the Orthodoxy. And understand orthodoxy, let's break that word down for a second. Ortho and doxy. Ortho means right in Greek. The doxy basically means opinion or thought or knowledge. So right knowledge, right thought, right opinion. So he sided with the orthodoxy. Now prior to that, you wouldn't have people running around calling themselves orthodoxy. Those people wouldn't call themselves orthodoxy. They all call themselves Christians. Just like you didn't have the Gnostic church. There were many different reasons. Remember, Constantine called this conference together. I'll link up at the end of this video, after I edit it on YouTube, I'll link up at the top where you can click on and see my video on what really happened at the Council of Nicaea. But he wanted, he had this conversation, everybody come together because Arius and the Bishop of Alexander was having like massive issues. But their issues were spilling over into all areas throughout the Roman Empire because there weren't just Gnostics. There were many different variations of Gnostics. There weren't just Orthodox Christians. There were many different variations of Christianity. Like, it wasn't Christianity, it was Christianities, plural, all throughout the Roman Empire. And this was making Constantine feel like a war could break out. People were fighting over this issue, much like people fight today. People want to argue, yell, fuss, and cuss today the same way they did back then, except they had a lot of violence going on. So, because of that, just like today. So because of all that, Constantine called the Council of Nicaea. Now at the Council of Nicaea, the biggest issue they wanted to establish was Jesus' divinity, right? They wanted that to be settled. And the Gnostics had a different viewpoint on Jesus' divinity. The Thomasinians had a different viewpoint on Jesus' divinity. So they lost. Arius showed up, and with about 18 other dudes, they beat them down and forced them to sign the Nicene Creed, and then expelled them out away from had them put away. I forgot what the word is, but had them sent away and excommunicated away from the rest of society because they still did not necessarily agree with what the Orthodox Church was going to teach. So in doing so, one of the groups that had to hide was those who were reading the Gospel of Thomas, the Thomasinians, and one of the Gnostic groups. And they wrote, they had a writing, and it was written in 3 major languages. It was written in Syriac, it was written in Greek, and it was written in Coptic. Now, the version that we mostly have today is the Coptic version. These Coptic versions, which Coptic is it's like one of the last Egyptian languages before it converted over to the Arab languages. So the Coptic language died out around the 17th century. So, but they was reading this book, and right around 350, when the Orthodox Church when the Christian Church finally had developed themselves into the Orthodox, and they started forcing people to believe whatever came out of Rome and whatever came out of Alexandria, Egypt. When they started forcing the people through bloodshed to do that, Athanasius had become a bishop of Alexandria around this time frame. And right after the Council of Nicaea, and you saw my video about what happened at Council of Nicaea, I told you how Athanasius started writing out. He was in charge initially of telling people when the Easter celebration was going to be done, which was based off the Roman and the Egyptian calendar. He was telling them when that was going to happen, but he also would publish uh, the canon, a canon that he thought should be the canon, which ended up being the canon eventually, because he did this for like 39 years. So right around 350, when he's the Bishop of Alexander, the the Coptic Christians started hiding their work, hiding their manuscripts, because they were being tortured and tormented and killed for not following the Nicene Creed and not following the Orthodox Christians' teachings. So they hid it. And because it's arid, it's dry, it was hidden in jars. I'm pretty sure if we keep digging, we'll probably find other versions of it, right? So when 1935 comes around, and although there were fragments already and some diggers and a guy who was like, they call him a peasant. I hate that they say a peasant Egyptian dude, just because he was poor, he shouldn't be called a peasant. But a poor Egyptian guy and some other workers, diggers, they find these jars. And in these jars, there's like 13 of these books. And they were books. They weren't scrolls, they were books. They were bound. And they found these 13 books, and it turned out to be, and it was near the town of Nag Hammadi, which is called, that's why it's called the Nag Hammadi Library or Nag Hammadi Codex. They found these books there. And when they found them there, one of the books that stood out the most was the Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel according to Thomas, or Didymus Judas Thomas. Twin Judas Thomas, right? So they found it. Oh, interesting side point. Did y'all know that the word Didymus also means balls, like testicles? I thought that was interesting. I've never told anybody else that, but I've always thought that was interesting, so I want to tell you guys that Didymus not only means twins, but in the Greek it also means testicles, because you have two and they're the same, hopefully, twins. But it's attributed to Didymus Judas Thomas. Every time you say that now, you're going to think about testicles. I just wanted to mess y'all brain up one time. So you're going to think that from now on. But anyway, so they found these codex. First found in 1945. It blazed the world for a while, but then the church got a hold, the Catholic Church got a hold to it. They shut it down for a little bit, but then around 1950, 1959, it gets published again. And in the 1950s, it gets published again. In 1959, it goes out big again, and people are like digging deep into this, because they're saying here's the proof of another esoteric style of Christianity, that Christians weren't all believing the same thing back then. It wasn't this golden era of Christianity, that there was something else. And the beauty of this book, it talks a lot about inner divinity, about inner power, about the kingdom being all around you and inside you. And because of that, people were pissed. But it also has it doesn't directly say, does an ex-Trinity thing, where Jesus is like, I ain't part of the Trinity. But it doesn't directly say he's part of the Trinity. It's kind of like some gray area. One of the main reasons why I think this book was also outlawed is because in this book, which is 114 saying, the Jesus character is equaling men to women. Constantly telling the dudes, you got to bring the women the women will be brought up to the same status of men. And you got to bring the two together. And we're going to cover some of those writings, some of those sayings. So it was talking a lot about that. And then it was also talking about you have a direct connect to the Father. You don't need a Savior, that the Savior is inside you. One of the main ones we're going to talk about tonight is a verse that says that talks about that. And it's that connection, that you don't need this church. You don't need the pastor, the priest, the pope. You don't need none of those people. That your divinity is inside you. And when you start getting that self-knowledge, then you are your own salvation. When you start getting that self-knowledge, you are your own creator, of this world. When it talks about how when you discover the world and you discover it to be a carcass, or you discover it to be a body, then you will be able to conform it, and you will see the world for what it truly is. It talks about a lot of the hidden mysteries. Now, I want you guys to understand something. Tonight, although we're going to dive into some of it, I'm diving into it not to convince you of anything. I'm diving into it not to teach you the whole god doggone thing. But for some of you guys who've never read it, never looked at it, who never thought about it, who was told that that's heresy, that's heresy, that's heresy, you're going to go to jail, you're going to go to hell, you're going to be a child of the devil, and all that kind of stuff, I hope to ignite something inside you that says, let me go look at this. Let me go find out for myself. I need to know for myself. I had a late dinner, and I ain't drink anything, so I'll be sipping water. So I want you guys, so that's the main purpose tonight, is to get you guys started on this, on this reading. I first discovered the Gospel of Thomas, man. It was about it was 1991, actually. That's when I first discovered the Gospel of Thomas. 91 was an interesting time for me. I had went to Desert Storm, I was in the Marine Corps, I was on a ship, we was getting ready to go to Bosnia again, well, we was getting ourselves ready to go to Bosnia. I was very disenfranchised from, I had studied Christianity, I had studied Islam, and I had studied Nuwampian, and I had just finished studying the Nuwampian, the right knowledge people, and I had studied the Zoroastrians, and I was really in this funky mood where I was just like, man, this is a bunch of bull. There's no wisdom out here. And then I was handed the Gospel of Thomas from a guy that I had met in Israel about 6 months prior. He sent that to me. Blew my mind. Opened up my eyes to see that there was something different that I needed to learn. And kept me on a path. And this book actually kept me on a path of self-discovery. Because then I started seeing everything from a different perspective. I started seeing the Hinduism and the Buddhism from a different perspective. I even started seeing Christianity from a different perspective. I started recognizing where there is just wisdom. And believe me, then here's the thing. When you go through the Gospel of Thomas, I don't accept all of the Gospel of Thomas as something divine. It is all just wisdom, good wisdom. But as I was also at that time studying the Hermetics, I realized that this knowledge flourished in Egypt with the Coptics because it was very Hermetic as well. Very Hermetic. Let's see. This book alone confirmed what Jesus was saying about the Bible. It's you, not me. Exactly. It does confirm that it definitely is you, not him. Right? Let's see. Brian says the book of St. Thomas is, I can't say the word because I can barely see it. My contacts are throwing me way off. Yeah, here's the thing. So, and many people will reject this book because it's not part of the canon. That's one thing I've never understood. Right? So you got a bunch of old dudes throughout history who have, for political and power reasons, decided what's canon and what's not. To go back, Athanasius started writing his books, what he decided should be canon. Prior to him, Eusebius of Caesarea was writing what he thought should be canon. For instance, Caesarea thought Eusebius of Caesarea, he thought that the book of Enoch should be canon. He thought the Maccabees should be canon. But Athanasius disagreed. Pretty much what you got as canon now is what Athanasius believed should be canon. There were several councils where the book of Revelation was not going to be canonized. It was canon. They didn't want it to be canon, especially those of the not the Church of Smyrna. I don't know why the church name escapes me. It's a church that looks bad with the 7 letters that are written to the churches. It'll come to me a little bit later. But one of those churches really didn't want the book of Revelations to be canon because it made that particular church look bad. Laodicea, the Church of Laodicea, when they had the council in Laodicea in the 1400s, they wanted Revelations to be taken out because the Church of Laodicea looked so bad according to the book of Revelations. So they wanted it out. Only someone walking around with blinders on would say that this book has a purity, right? Because this book has been tampered with, changed, all that sort of thing. So the Gospel of Thomas also has went through that. It's went through redactors. There are 3 or 4 major versions of it, and all of them are not exactly the same. It's went through some redaction itself. So what I like to focus on is the part is what we can see as wisdom. It's interesting. That's why it's not part of canon. There was corresponding criteria required, not because they just picked and choose what they wanted. That's not actually true, Brian Morris, because you're looking at it from a today's eyes going back, not looking at what was happening. I did a video called "What Really Happened at the Council of Nicaea." At the Council of Nicaea, once the ones who were made in charge, meaning what became the Orthodoxy, they decided that that none of the Gnostic writings would be part of it. Eusebius of Caesarea was also to the point where Constantine also agreed with him that since there are four winds and four corners of the earth, they were referring to what Irenaeus wrote in 180. Since there are four corners and four corners of the earth, four winds, there should only be four gospels, right? And then they only wanted gospels that put the church in control. So to say that it didn't correspond is not true. And here's one of the reasons why. There are many things in the Gospel of Thomas that does correspond to the four gospels. Therefore, there are a decent number of Christian scholars who think that the Gospel of Thomas is or was alongside with the Fable Qlm that was used to finish off the four gospels. Recognize that the four gospels that you have were never complete. Mark is almost complete except for one thing. The original versions of Mark, it just stopped, the stone was rolled over and the tomb was empty. All that other stuff that's in Mark wasn't in the original text. It was added later. Just like the story of the woman who committed adultery in John originally wasn't in John. Then it was at the back of John. Then they moved it forward in John. Then they put it somewhere else in John. They kept moving it around. Even your Old Testament, the redactors kept changing it. You got the J text, the P text, the D text, and all these other texts that were different, which is why you have two creations in Genesis. So to say that it wasn't in correspondence with, that the Gospel of Thomas didn't coincide, is not necessarily true, because there are many things in the Gospel of Thomas that are very similar. The story of the sower planting seeds on good ground and rocks and thorns and thistles and all that, is in the Gospel of Thomas. It's also in I think Luke is where that story is told. There are other stories that are in the Gospel of Thomas that are in your Bible. Now the difference is, Gospel of Thomas is not a narrative. It's not a narrative. It's 114 sayings. It doesn't say anything about the passion. Doesn't say anything about the resurrection. Doesn't have anything about birth. Doesn't have any of those things. But if it was about correspondence, then most of the other books would be kicked out as well. Because when you look at the lineage of Jesus compared to Matthew and compared to Luke, they're not the same. Right? They're not the same. Unless Mary and Joseph are cousins, they ain't the same. And they could have been cousins. Because we know they did the incest thing, even though incest was supposed to be outlawed back in Deuteronomy, I believe. But hey, So to cast something out today is merely because you're just following what a bunch of old people kept writing over and over again. And even when you look at more recent Bibles, when you look at the King James Version of the Bible, King James, and then you go back and you look at the Codex Sinaiticus and the some of the where he wrote them from, there are differences. As I did in my video about the Hebrew Israelite, the Codex Sinaiticus and everything prior to King James said nothing about the children of Israel sailing away on slave ships to Egypt for 400 years. Nothing ever said that. None of the old texts say that. There's nothing in there that says that. But King James added it because it was being written in the 1600s, and what was going on? Transatlantic slave trade. So we need to justify it. Need to justify that whole thing. So there's to say that there's no consistencies. This is why I say that when a person just accepts what their pastor says, accept what people who thought the earth, that if you went 6 miles past the seashore you would fall off the earth, says, people who thought that the sun revolves around the earth and all the other planets, that the earth was the center of the universe. We're talking about people who thought that there were sea monsters if you went past that 6 miles. These were the people who decided who God was and what God said, and what's history and what's not, right? So, you know, to put so much credibility on those people who were lacking in so many scientific skill sets, who were, you know, thinking that, I mean, you're talking about people who said during the Inquisition, if you're practicing, if they thought you were practicing witchcraft, what we're going to do is tie you to a stone and drop you in the water. If you stay under, if you float up, you're a witch. If you don't, then you're innocent. So when they died, they were innocent. These are the people that folks put their trust in today. I've always found that interesting. And it's cool because if that's convenient for you to be blind like that, go ahead, knock yourself out. I care less, really. That's why I say all the time, my channel is for people who are of an open mind. Let's see. King James added its source. What is the relevant text? All you have to do is just go read the Codex Sinaiticus, or go read any of the text, the Vulgate. If you go look at the Vulgate, the Codex Sinaiticus, if you go look at the D text, and that's the primary one. Everything from Deuteronomy, for the most part, comes from the D text, which is the Deuteronomist text, right? It wasn't in the D text, it wasn't in the Vulgate, which is why it wasn't in the Sinaiticus, but King James added it. It was added in King James. So if you and that's the weird thing, you asked me for a source, but I said that in the beginning. That's the source. The previous versions, Sinaiticus, Vulgate, D text, and just go to the D text. Start there. So you start with D text. If it's not in D text, then it had to be added by something else later on, right? And we're not even, you know, because they just talk about how your children will be unruly, right? And they'll go away to Egypt. It says nothing about slave ships and selling away to Egypt, you know. But if you want a source, go look it up. Go look that source up. So moving right along into the Gospel of Thomas, I really find the first two verses to be, well, actually the first three verses to have a lot of significance when we are looking at our inner selves, when we're looking to grow, and grow and become better. And let's see. I try to read you guys' comments as you go, and some of them we'll talk about, some we won't. I can help you clear up your exegesis transmission. I don't need that help, you know. And for those who still want to like debate me and stuff like that, let me be very clear. I spent a year with Kevin debating people. It serves no purpose, to be honest. If we disagree, we disagree. It is what it is. It doesn't bother me. You believe what you want to believe. I go and I read the text and I see what's there. And if it's not anywhere else, it's not anywhere else. If somebody added it, somebody added it. I don't understand what's so hard to believe about people adding stuff. You know, people act like there's like an impenetrable shield around these things that people can't add stuff. But if I wanted help in that, no disrespect, if I wanted help in that, I would ask for it. I'm not asking. So there's nothing to clear up. If what I talk about bothers you, just like how they used to tell us when we was kids, change the channel, you can change the channel. Nobody's forcing you to be here. But as I said, so the Gospel of Thomas, let's go ahead and talk about these first three verses, right? First three verses of the Gospel of Thomas. The first one, which is interesting. Oh, and before I go there, it says that these were the words spoken by Didymus Judas Thomas, recorded. Some scholars do think that some scholars say he's a twin of Jesus. Others say he's just a twin. And Didymus, meaning twin, was just like a nickname. Judas was his actual name, and Thomas was his surname or Greek name. But the first verse said, and he said, whoever discovers the interpretation of these things will not taste death. Now, does that mean literal, like death of the physical body? No. He's talking about spiritual death, right? You won't taste spiritual death if you can understand these things and get beyond, you know, the poverty of your own flesh. And so the second saying The second saying goes, those who, and this is one of my favorite sayings as far as the Gospel of Thomas is concerned. One of my favorite sayings in the Gospel of Thomas is, those who seek should not stop seeking until they find. And when they find, they will be disturbed. And when they are disturbed, they will marvel, and then they will reign over all. Let's break that down for a second. Those who seek should not stop seeking until they find. Meaning that as you go out and you seek knowledge, whatever you're seeking, whatever you're looking for, whatever it is you're striving to come to an understanding or change in your life, you should never stop seeking it. You should keep going. That to get stuck in a mindset or stuck in a point where you don't think you have anything else to learn, anything else to grow to, is stagnation. And we know that in the Hermetic laws, either you are vibrating higher or you are vibrating lower. You're either growing or you're dying. You're increasing or decreasing. There is no stagnation whatsoever. And then it says, keep seeking until you find. Never stop. Never give up. Never stop trying to grow. Never stop seeking. Never stop searching. Never stop going after information. Just because somebody brings something to you, don't automatically dismiss it because you never ever heard of it, or if it's something that's new to you. Everything that anybody has ever said to me, I went back and I researched. I didn't just dismiss it. I looked deeper. I looked a lot deeper into it to find out. When people told me about the Sinaiticus, I went and studied it. When they told me about the cuneiform and Sumerian story, I went and I studied it. When I heard about Zoroastrian, when I heard about Sumerians, when I heard about the Hindu text and the Buddhist text, I went and I studied it. And I kept studying. Right, and I found a lot of these same sayings in the Gospel of Thomas you will find in the Hindu text. You'll find it in the, matter of fact, you'll find, this is a book that we're studying over on Patreon, the Tao Te Ching. Some of these things you'll find in the, that when you find, they will be disturbed. Now, understand, you will be disturbed. You know why? Because everything that you have learned, you might have to unravel. You may have to unlearn everything that your parents taught you. You may have to unlearn everything that the church taught you, that the synagogue taught you, that the mosque taught you. You may have to unlearn all those things. What your culture has taught you, you may have to unlearn all that. Everything that you've been through, all the trauma that you've been through, you may have to unlearn and go through that process of redeveloping yourself and reteaching yourself. But it's disturbing when you have to do that. It's a trying, it's a challenge. When you have to go deeper within yourself to get past all the struggles and everything that you learn, that is not easy. That's like saying you got to stop being you and learn how to create and build a brand new you. That's not easy. And you will be disturbed because there's a young lady I was having a communication with, and she was telling me how her son is doing all these studies and realizing all these things that weren't necessarily true, and he's angry. He's very angry about it, right? And right, Papa said it did disturb him, but it was liberating at the same time, and it is. It disturbs you. It causes you to have to search deeper, but then, as it says, after you are disturbed, you will marvel because you'll be amazed at the information. You'll be amazed at what you learned. You'll be amazed at how things that you weren't paying attention to before, how they are now, how you're receiving them, how that information is coming across to you. And then when you finish marveling, you'll rule over all. Now, this is very hermetic because once you understand the marvels and how the universe works and all this universal wisdom, like Solomon said, nothing new under the sun, you start to know how to work this universe, this world, and how to do it within the confines of universal law, so that you can then create your own universe, create your own life, create your own heaven. We're going to see how in here the third one talks about let me just read that third one to you. All right. Uh, it says, Jesus said, if your leaders say to you, look, the Father's imperial rule is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. That sounds familiar, right? You've seen this similarly in the other Gospels. If they say to you that it is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. Rather, the Father's imperial rule is inside you and outside you. Now, the other ones don't say this part, inside you and outside you. When you know yourself, you will be known. And when you understand that you are children of the living Father, but if you don't, and you understand you're children of the living Father, but if you do not know yourself, then you live in poverty, and you are that poverty. So, I mean, think about that. Think about that. Basically saying that the kingdom is inside you and it's outside you. It's all around you. It's not in the sky. It's not for later. It's now. It's now inside you, now outside you. But you've been hidden from you. There are many other verses that talks about how when you start to recognize the world, you recognize what's been hidden from you and what they've kept away from you. It talks about how pastors, or it says Pharisees, but pastors, priests, anyone who's holding the keys to knowledge, that they hold this information, that they are like dogs who are in the pen to guard the cattle, but they don't eat, nor do they allow the cattle to eat. It says that the Pharisees are the ones that hold the keys, but they do not open up the books or open the knowledge up to the people. They keep it for themselves. Even some of the early church fathers, like Origen, talked about how he considered himself Gnostic, that he was of knowledge, but there was the base knowledge for everybody else, and those of higher levels should have the secret knowledge. So all the public gets this base knowledge, but then he and the other higher ups, they get this secret knowledge. So, but what he's saying here is that it's inside you and it's outside you. This is very hermetic. This is very much what is taught in the hermetic laws as well. This is why I believe it thrives so well in Egypt, in the Coptic, because of that. That it is incredibly hermetic in its teachings, and that you have really, and the only way to do that is of knowing yourself. You really have to know yourself. Be honest with yourself. There are many other verses in here, many other pieces of story, topics of wisdom that where he talks about having that inner knowledge, that gnosis. This is why I said that the Gnostics were of many different variations. It wasn't like the one Gnostic church. There were many variations. Even Irenaeus had a variation of, Arius had a variation of the Gnostic churches. But he talks about that quite a few times. He says in 5, know what's in front of your face, and what is hidden from you will be disclosed to you. For there is nothing hidden that won't be revealed. That everything is for you, is right in front of you. That all you have to do is look for it. Be open to it. Now, when you're not open to it, when you're saying that I know, and this is right because I had an experience. I had an experience with Jesus. I had an experience with Muhammad. I had an experience with Allah. I had an experience with Krishna, with Brahma. I had an experience in the temple, in the Buddhist temple. Everybody has had experiences. Everybody's had experiences. Good experiences, bad experiences. But everybody has had experiences, and your experience doesn't supersede the other person's experience. And matter of fact, let me tell you why it doesn't supersede the other person's experience. There is another one in here where it talks about the kingdom. Let me see if I can find it real quick. There's another one. Yeah, this one. Right? It says 76. And actually 76 and 77 and 78, but we're just going to do one of them. Because they all are very similar in meaning. You got to be able to break that down. But he says that the Father's imperial rule is like a merchant. No, not that one. That's not the one I want. No, that's not the one I want. Because it explains it very perfectly. 76, 77, 78 are good. But there's another one that's like a 3-course one. That, oh, maybe it was that one. Oh man, I got a little distracted right there, guys. But I'm gonna paraphrase it since I can't find it immediately. But it says that the kingdom, the Father's kingdom. Oh yeah, it's 90. I'm sorry, it's 96, not 76. The Father's imperial rule is like a woman who took a little leaven, hid it in the dough, and made it into large loaves of bread. Anyone who has 2 ears had better listen. I want you to think about that. Good evening, how you doing, Miss Brown? But think about that. A woman who had the kingdom is like a woman who took a little leaven. So the little bit of leaven is like the kingdom, right? And she hid it in the dough and she made many loaves. So she made many loaves out of the little bit of leaven. There are many different variations of wisdom that are talking about the kingdom, about getting to the kingdom, about understanding who you are, your inner knowledge of self, know thyself, and that gets you to kingdom understanding. That gets you into the heaven on earth, the heaven that's all around you and inside of you. 97, the Father's imperial rule is like a woman. And this one is interesting to me because I was listening to one so-called scholar read this one, and he was like, I don't know what it means. Which is not that he got to know what everything means, but I just found it interesting. He was being very sarcastic in his whole speech because he's evidently Christian and he doesn't like this book. So he was very sarcastic in his entire lecture. But this one, the Father's imperial rule is like a woman who is carrying a jar full of meal. When she was walking along the distant road, the handle of the jar broke and the meal spilled behind her along the road. She didn't know it. She hadn't noticed a problem. When she reached her house, she put the jar down and discovered it was empty. So as she walked, the meal was spread out all along her path, meaning that the knowledge and the wisdom of the Creator, this universal knowledge of how it has been spread out. It's spread out in Buddhism. It's spread out in Hinduism. It's spread out in Zoroastrianism. It's spread out in the Anunnaki. It's spread out in Christianity. It's spread out in Islam, Judaism. It's spread out in the Hopi Indians, the Aztecs, the Mayans. It's spread out, which is why there's certain core wisdom, pieces of core wisdom that everybody seems to know, that everybody seems to talk about, that nobody left out really. And that information just kept being spread. Know thyself has been taught all over the place. Exactly. It's pieces of the puzzle. It's kind of like when two people come together, right, in a marriage. You're two pieces of a puzzle, different shapes, but you fit perfectly together. When you can read between these lines, then you are putting the puzzle together, the big picture of the kingdom. I missed a comment here. If you claim that the King James Version reference interest in Bible translation proceeding, Jay read the same. Apparently, he was not able to tell us, but you just go back and watch my video on the Hebrew Israelites. I'm not going into that tonight. I'm not dealing with distractions of that nature. But you can go and read that there. You can go watch that video about Hebrew Israelites, and you'll see that information. But just go read it. Read it through the text. That's simple enough. Just go read the text. So, as we understand this, looking inside yourself and understand that inner knowledge is what brings you into understanding where this kingdom of God. But there's a power that you have to have within yourself. When you discover yourself, you discover this power, right? And that power is in how you speak and how you talk and how you move and how you act, right? I missed a comment. Let's see. I'm not a Hebrew Israelite, but y'all would avoid it if you were. Not really understand what you mean by that one. It's not about you being a Hebrew Israelite. It's just the fact that that's not what we're talking about. I was just making a reference to that, but that's not what we're talking about tonight. And people often try to distract the conversation with things that we're not talking about. So if you want to talk about that one, go look at my video on that one, and you're good to go. And I'm sure in the future we'll cover that again, but not tonight. So anyhow, so you have a power within you. There's one thing they said in 14. He said that if you fast, you will bring sin upon yourself, and if you pray, you will be condemned. And if you give charity, you will harm your spirit. when you go into any region and walk about on the countryside, when the people take you in, eat what they serve you, and heal the sick among them. After all, what goes in your mouth won't defile you, what comes out of your mouth will. Now, in all of that, the main thing I want you to understand is what comes out of your mouth is what defiles you. It's not what goes in, it's not the things you eat. Now, of course, yes, our bodies are designed to eat certain ways. There are certain things in our food system that can harm us, so you do want to take care of the inside. There's another verse that talks about why do you why do you not wash the outside of the cup? He who made the inside of the cup also made the outside of the cup. So if you're going to take care of the outside, it is the words of your mouth. And when you don't know the power of your words and your intentions, then you are lacking your ability to create and to be a master over this word. Remember, I said that there's verses in here, there's like 3 or 4 that talks about the fact that when you discover the world, you discover a carcass, you discover a body, a dead body. That there's another one where it talks about a guy carrying a lamb and said that he will that if you allow others to control you, then you become dead like the lamb as well. You become a carcass if you allow the world to devour you, because he said he'll kill the lamb, he won't eat it while it's alive, and then the lamb will become a carcass and he'll devour it. In the same way, you get the world will devour you and turn you into a carcass. We're having a serious deep dive into the Gospel of Thomas on here. So you got to be mindful of the words you say. Oftentimes when people go and they pray, they're fasting and they're praying, but their intentions are filled with doubt. There's another verse in here that talks about the fact, similar to what you've already read in your Bibles, where it says, if you have the faith of the mustard seed, or if 2 come together, I'm in their presence. What it says is that when you make the 2 as one and tell the mountain to move, the mountain will be moved. Now understand, making the 2 as one is it's different ways you can think. Getting your heart and your mind as one. Getting your male energy and your female energy as one. And the reason why I say that one is because just like the last verse, just like the last one, I believe it's the last one, he says, Simon Peter said to them, make Mary leave us, for females don't deserve life. And Jesus said, look, I will guide her and make her as you males, so that she too may become a living spirit resembling you males, for every female who makes themselves a male will enter the kingdom of heaven. And that's not to say that transvestites or things like that. It's not saying to change your sex, but what it's saying is talking about your energy, your being, your masculine and your feminine becoming united, raising the kundalini energy, but your mind and your spirit coming together in unity. Just like if you have 2 people who are praying and asking for the same thing, trying to manifest the same thing, but one person has doubt and the other person actually believes, nothing's going to happen. Both people need to be in uniformity with one another in order for that to occur. But you got to be in uniformity with yourself before that occurs. You can't sit here and say, I'm going to manifest a business, I'm going to manifest this, I'm going to manifest that, but you're out of sync, out of unity with yourself. You're overly masculine or you're overly feminine, or hell, you're devoid of either one. You really have to get that in order and caught up. I printed out the Gospel of Thomas to make it easier for my reading, because my book is too small without my reading glasses. So you have to understand that. Now, as far as being able to utilize that power, like I said, it's all about knowing the inside of who you are. There's another verse, verse 70, where it has Jesus saying, if you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not have that within you, what you do not have within you will kill you. It's all in you. You have the power to change your life. You have the power within you. You don't need, that takes away from the power of the church. That takes away from the power of the pastor. That takes away from the power of the priest and everybody else. Because it like Marcus Aurelius said, at the end of the day, it's up to you. It's up to you. End of the day is you. It's nobody else. There's no, you need to go to confession you need to run up to the altar. You need to, no, you got to find how to communicate with the universe, with yourself. You know, it talks about how the wealthy will reign over the earth. And he said the wealthy should reign over the earth, right? And the reason why the wealthy, and it doesn't say earth, it just says should reign overall. And the reason why the wealthy is going to reign, because the wealthy will understand how to utilize universal law without breaking universal law, how to use natural law without breaking natural law. Now, does everybody get to that position and then lose themselves, lose their mind? Do people do things that we perceive to be bad, wrong, evil? Sure, they do. Of course they do. No one's perfect here. But it says that those who know all but are lacking in themselves are utterly lacking. So some people are still going to know stuff and know how to use universal law, but still be lacking, still find themselves lacking, because all they have is knowing. All they have is they understand, but that's it. Let's see. I'm just going through, guys. There's another one about unity that I said. Jesus said, two will recline on the couch. One will die, one will live. Right? Two. If folks were to get a hold of this book, it would challenge everything. No wonder it was, it had to be taken out, because you would challenge too much stuff. This is why Arius had to be excommunicated from Rome, because too many people started following him. And he was in this Egyptian area. And I said, what was that? Oh, two will recline on the couch, one will die, one will live. Salome said, who are you, master? You have climbed onto my couch and eaten from my table as if you are from someone. Jesus said to her, I am the one who comes from what is whole. I was granted from the things of my Father. She said, I am your disciple. He said, for this reason I say, if one is whole, one will be filled with light. But if one is divided, one will be filled with darkness. So you have to become whole. It's just like in a relationship. If you are in a relationship and if the two of you are whole, in sync with one another in a relationship, you will show light. But when the two of you are not whole in a relationship, you will find yourself in darkness. Your relationship will be in darkness. So you have to become whole within yourself. If you are fractured, if you are broken, if you are shattered, then you have to know thyself to become whole within yourself, so that then you can shine your light. You can shine your light so that your light shines, so that the candle from your light shines and you are not in utter darkness. So it's about really understanding who you are in this. Man, there's like just so many, there's so much in here that we can go through. I know I paraphrase a lot of these things, but it's like 56 is the one that said, whoever has come to know the world, whoever has come to know the world has discovered the carcass, and whoever discovered the carcass of that person, the world is not worthy. So the world is not even worthy of you once you discover this information, once you know this, and you start internalizing. Now here's the thing, like I said, you can't just know it. You gotta internalize it. One of my favorite verses is verse 48, right? Verse 48 says, if two make peace with one another in a single house, they will say to the mountain, move from here, and it will move. Let's say you got struggle in your house. You got issue in your house. You got division in your house. If you and your mate come together and y'all come to agreement with one another, then whatever troubles you're suffering through, whatever you're dealing with, you will tell it, you'll have that power to tell it to move, and it'll move, right? Because you'll then also be taking the right action towards it. If you are struggling with a brokenness inside yourself and you tell it to move, it will move. But you have to come into unity. This is where the Hermetic talks about, in order to create anything, it takes both male and female. That the law of gender says it requires both male and female in order to create. In order to birth anything, male and female is needed. So this is why I know the Coptic Christians really took hold of this, because it is so hermetic in the teachings from the Emerald Tablets and the Kabbalion, even though the Kabbalion was written much later. But if you do that, you come together in unity within yourself and come in unity in your household, then there's nothing that can stop you. Nothing that can stop you. What did you say? Teach brother, being in touch with yourself is regardless of outside. You're right. Regardless of the outside noise, you're exactly right. I know I'm missing some of you. I can. 107 reads just like the Bible. I forget what book. Let's see. 107. Let's go. All right, because we're gonna cut this short in just a few minutes. All right, I'm not gonna keep you guys all night. All right, 107. These eyes ain't working too well without my glasses. Jesus said, the father in the prayer rule is just like a shepherd who had 100 sheep. One of them, the largest, went away and left the 99 and looked for the one until he found it. And he went and looked for the one until he found it. And he had toiled. After he had toiled, he said to the sheep, I love you more than the 99. And yeah, there is a verse in the Bible like that. That's what I'm saying. This is why they thought that this might have been the cue. A lot of scholars think that this might have been the cue. Some think it might have been the cue. Some think it was alongside the cue. And the cue is the QLM, which is what they use to finish off the other verse, the other Bibles, the other not Bibles, the other books. So, in short, guys, I hope that this brief breakdown of the Gospel of Thomas. We actually covered a lot of information in the Gospel of Thomas. We covered some, like the basic premise, that knowledge of self is vital in order for you to discover the kingdom and everything that is hidden. That once you discover everything that is hidden and discover the trueness of the kingdom, that you will be able to reign over and manifest in life what it is you choose, because you've gotten your masculine and feminine to come together in unity, that you have unity within yourself, that you are not running after things that are outside of universal law, for you to have standing that when you affix things in the above, that it affects everything in the below. And the below also affects the above, that you have it. When you get into the right mindset of asking for things pure of heart, but being in the presence of the kingdom is now. So it is now that you can have great health in your life. It is now that you can have healing in your life. It is, right, the Tao talks a lot about this. Buddha is Tao, Buddha is Hindu, but you can have all these things now, but you have to be in that presence. Now, I know a lot of churches are teaching that today. They're telling you that you have to believe in it as if it's already here, but they don't teach you how to do that. They don't teach you how to believe and how to know it as if it's already, how to be in the presence of it. It's understanding that time is just a circle, and you can pick any point of the circle that you want, that you are in the now of it. And in order to do that, if you've seen some of my meditation videos, I tell you that you have to be able to know it through all your expressions. Know it in thought, know it in the smell, know it in how it feels, and breathe it in. Like when you meditate, already be in that state of knowing, right? Like, let's say you wanted a car. Feel the car, like feel yourself driving the car, feel yourself seeing the car, all those kind of things. Just by putting that thought into the atmosphere, putting that thought, that energy out, everything starts moving in that direction. So I'm telling you, it's the Gospel of Thomas is getting you into that mode and telling you how to get into that mode and to do that. So, guys, look, this has been great. Golgotha means the place of the skulls, and you must be reborn in your mind. Exactly, you must be reborn in your mind. Reborn. And here's the thing about it. It says being born of water, and many people just go to the womb of the woman when they talk about being reborn of water. Understanding that your brain sits in a fluid, right? So your brain must be reborn in the water, born out of that water, right? The one who finds truth moves fast. Exactly. Everyone is writing. Exactly. We got to move fast. You gotta get reborn in your mind. Get reborn in your heart. There's fluid in your heart, the blood. Reborn. Get reborn in all your energies. Your chakras are like pools of energy that needs to flow. So you got to get that rebirth of the mind. Let go of the things. Be willing to unlearn everything you've been taught, and to seek out just truth. Like that second one says, keep knocking. As the other one say, knock and the door shall be open. Just keep knocking. Don't ever stop knocking. Don't ever stop seeking out information and learning and growing. Continue to grow. Continue to grow. Continue to look for ways to expand yourself. Look for opportunities to gain new knowledge, new information. Don't be afraid of those things. And already be in the presence of it. Always be in the presence of it. You know, oftentimes I sit in meditation, seeing my life as already how I want to be. So that's how you guys have to be. Now I'm going to go ahead and call this an evening. I really appreciate you guys. I really enjoyed this one. The Gospel of Thomas is one of my favorite books to read and study because of all the information that it holds and the great wisdom that it holds. Like I said, it's been redacted just like any other book, so I don't take it as something that was written by God. But it is a great book for studying and understanding the wisdom of how you have life and grow in life. So y'all have a great day, and remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. And if you're watching the YouTube video, give me 24 hours and I'll link up the other 2 videos that I talked about earlier so you can see the video about what happened. Next week, guys, we're going to talk about polygamy. We're talking polygamy next week. That's been an interesting conversation I've seen on Facebook all week. So we're going to talk about polygamy. So y'all have a great day. And I'm going to start signing off on all these. It's going to take a minute for each one of them to sign off. Don't say, oh no, that's what we going to talk about that. All right? We going to talk about it. And make sure y'all here for it. Call your friends. Call your mama and them. Get everybody. Because we're going to see how that goes. And Blog Talk, appreciate you guys. And then the Blog Talk and Facebook, YouTube, and then you guys.